Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail C. Martin, and tonight we are talking about growing up God, in other words, Jack. But before we get into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Puerta. I have an MFA in film and television, and I work on the urban fantasy track at DragonCon.
Very good.
Yes,
Carol.
she does. And she's very, and anybody watching this, she is mine. Anyway, yes, I'm Carol Malcolm. I'm the director of the urban fantasy track at DragonCon. And I'm very fortunate to have Anna as one of my able volunteers. I couldn't get by without her. And I'm fortunate to have Gail as a many-time panelist from the very beginning of the track. So I appreciate that very much. And we have covered Supernatural on Urban Fantasy Track since the track was formed in 2013. And I did watch it from the beginning. I started watching because a friend of mine told me, she said, well, they're saying it's like Buffy with boys. And I was like, I'll give it a try. So I was happy when the show was assigned to my track.
Awesome. Well, and I am very grateful for both of you because the Urban Fantasy Track is one of the highlights for DragonCon of my whole weekend. So thank you for making that happen. I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all the modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. So we get Jack Kline, who is a nephilim, and we've kind of run into nephilim before, but not like Jack. So let's start with what are your favorite, what's your favorite scene with Jack? And then we'll come back and talk about more of the details. Anna?
Oh, can Carol go first?
Sure.
Well, I'm thinking about that, and I think I really like the episode, and I'm drawing a blank, even after 15 seasons of Supernatural Rewind, of the name of the episode, but it's one of the in one of the later ones where it seemed as though he was going to be dying, and because they couldn't figure out how to repair him, and Dean took him out. And it was like, well, here, you can learn how to drive, you can drive the car. And it's like, he's letting somebody else drive the car. That whole episode, I thought, you got to see another side of Jack, another side of Dean, to be honest. And also just, Jack being a kid. I mean, we saw from the beginning that, here he is, this fully formed, what we would consider a young man, an older teenager, or somebody in that age group from the look of him, and yet he's not like that at all in terms of his understanding. So some of those things were amusing, but I did really like that whole episode. But for a specific scene, I really liked the last time we saw him, when he made that hand, that bye kind of thing that he used to, what he did in the very beginning, when he was a little bit awkward and trying to learn how to act like a human anyway. And when he did that and walked off, I thought that was great, that that they brought him kind of around back to the beginning, and yet everything was completely different.
Mm-hmm. Anna?
I think I was trying to think of like a really, powerful moment, but I think like a lot of my favorite moments were just like Jack and Cass. I don't know, like being father and son, like those little moments where they were just like spending time together, or when Jack would go on a case. I thought I think those were my favorite moments. I don't know if I can think of like a specific scene, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, it was cool the way they were juxtaposed because for so long Kaz was kind of the the awkward one. I mean, it took him a while to get into
Yeah.
this of what's it like to be a human and all that. But I think that,
And then he became the teacher, sort of.
right, exactly. And by the time Jack turned up, it was kind of like, okay, well, I've been through this, so let me explain to you how this works. I mean, with the added importance of who Jack was and what, we don't know at that point. We didn't know what his role was going to be, but that didn't matter to Kaz. To him, it was always he's going to have to. We have to take care of him, or I have to take care of him because I said I would. That was pretty much that was it for him.
I think one of my favorite scenes is the very first when Jack goes out of the house. He's stark naked. He walks up to that pirate, that really funny pirate junk food, fast food shop, and he has no idea what he's doing, but he's talking to the pirate.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the drive-through that looks like a pirate, and it talks back to him. So he's having this conversation, and they just think he's stoned out of his head, and he has no idea what's going on. And that was just so funny. And I also felt so bad for Alex Calvert that so early in being on the show, they sent him out there in like next to nothing and had him walk around in the altogether. So I don't know whether that was a hazing or what, but that I just thought he played the role of being so completely clueless and innocent so well.
Yeah,
and
he really did.
And I was shocked to find out how old the actor was compared to how he brought Jack to life, because he's a whole lot older than he looks or was made to look in that part. And so Al, as they call him, Alexander Calvert, just did a terrific job with that. So, they brought Jack into the show after season 12. And there's always a risk when you bring a new, younger character in on an established show. In fact, the diner where they talk with Jack the first time is called Cousin Oscar's, because that's a nod to the Brady Bunch, where after the Brady kids started to age out of being the cute siblings at home, they brought in tow-headed little Cousin Oscar out of nowhere because they needed a fresh kid. And it's kind of
fresh kid. I'm sorry, that's just a funny term.
Yeah, no, they actually named the diner Cousin Oscar's. And that's always a risk that, is this a sign that a show is winding down, or that it's lost its steam, or quick, throw a cute kid at the show? And especially with the CW's demographics, which was teenagers. Jensen and Jared had aged out of being teenagers a while back. What do you think about the introduction of Jack's character, aside from the role he ended up finally playing? Were you happy to see him? Were you worried that it was a bad sign for the show? Did you wonder where this was going to go? Anna?
I mean, I think at a certain point, you're just along for the ride with Supernatural. And at season 12 and 13, you're just sort of in it for the long haul, I think. So I think I was down for anything, but I think, I'm always excited to see like what they're going to come up with next, what crazy thing they're going to do. And I thought Lucifer having a son, I mean, there's so many different directions you can take that, and so I thought what they did with Jack was fun. I mean, they could have gone really dark with, Lucifer having a son. So I enjoyed it. I think I was just strapped in on the roller coaster ride that Supernatural is.
Okay, Carol.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, strapped in. Yeah. When he first came on the show, I mean, it was kind of like, okay, where are they going to go with this? How are they going to handle this? But the thing is that, the whole idea of the Nephilim you know, it really hadn't been explored in depth. So and it's something that is actually a pretty cool topic that gets explored in a lot of urban fantasy. So I thought, okay, well, let's see what they do with it. I mean, how are they going to handle it? Is it going to be, the fact that he's Lucifer's son and not just some old nephilim? He didn't just have any angelic parent. So there was that level of, okay, well, I trust they're going to do something. And we talked about this during Rewind, that when I was originally watching the show, his development over the course of those few years, not so much near the end, but kind of in the middle parts, I guess, I thought that there were some things, some aspects to his character where they were annoying, and it was just kind of dragged out. But then when we talked about this during our Rewind discussions, the fact that watching a season over the course of a month rather than over the course of several months, stretching it out, that what you saw really made a lot more sense in terms of his development. He wasn't quite, it wasn't quite as difficult, I guess, to try to feel some kind of compassion for him, I guess. I mean, it's still a bum deal no matter what way you look at it, but I think watching it so close together, it did make it more more understandable that he was the way he was, and it kind of made the character more interesting, at least to me. Just seeing that there was seeing the kind of the natural progression.
Okay. Yeah, and I had the same sort of feeling, Carol, when I did a rewatch and rewatched season 12. Of course, that's the season with Kline and Lucifer, and when she's pregnant with the baby and everybody's trying to get the baby. Because when I initially watched it as it aired, I was very impatient with Kelly. I thought she was kind of stupid and hopelessly naive, and oh my gosh, And when I watched it again, having the benefit of seeing the rest of the show and then coming back with hindsight, I could see how all of that became part of her relentless optimism that Jack could be whatever he was and transcend his parentage, and that her belief in him and her faith in him and all of that helped make him who he was, and not let him fall to Lucifer. So that was definitely something that was very different on a rewatch than when I watched it play out initially, because I was just so impatient with her originally. And I thought it was a very interesting twist for them to take, because we had Chuck as God. We've already had God's sister, so that's kind of an interesting addition to canon.
Yeah.
But one of the things, we had angels and archangels and all this other stuff. But one of the things the show shied away from in all its season was they almost never mentioned Jesus' character. You could have God, you could have the archangels, you could have Lucifer. You couldn't touch Jesus except for one or two little, side comments that people made. Like Cass telling Dean Jesus dies when Dean's reading the Bible. Spoiler.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting, by casting Jack as the son of Lucifer and a human, that you still got that godlike son image, but in a very different way, with very different connotations and none of the baggage that would have come with it any other way. And then, of course, the role he played in the final episodes, taking down a corrupted Chuck. So I thought that was a very, very daring thing, really, for the show to do. And that they did it very well and kind of threaded that needle. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, Sam and Dean and Cass got to be Jack's parents for all intents and purposes. Lucifer kept saying he wanted to be, but of course, he had a nefarious agenda. Kelly would have loved to have been around, but she was gone. So what did you think of Sam, Dean, and Cass's attempts at parenting? It was sort of like Three Men and a Nephilim quite a bit of the time. Anna?
Well, I mean, I guess like all parents, they made mistakes. They tried their best sometimes. You know, like I said, like some of my favorite moments are just like the sort of father-son moments between the various boys and Jack. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed getting to see them kind of be the mentor, whereas they had been the mentees in a lot of cases, like with Bobby. Getting them on the other side of that was fun, and a lot of times it was sweet. Obviously there were some hiccups, like when they were like, oh, should we kill him?
Yeah, not something most parents ask themselves, but yeah.
Right. I mean, not seriously. Sometimes, my parents said they wanted to wring my neck, but I don't think they were saying it seriously. So yeah, there's definitely some moments that were less parent-like and more hunter-like in nature. But I mean, that was probably my favorite parts, were the parenting parts.
Okay.
And family parts. So
okay, Carol?
Yeah, and I think that it was good for Sam and Dean, mainly because, they had to, you could tell they were making a conscious effort to not be like their own dad was to them. But at the same time, sometimes those things would sneak through. And I think they were finding out that, there really isn't a blueprint, that to being a parent. And that's essentially what they were. Because some of the times Cass was gone. He was off doing whatever, that he needed to. And the fact that, that was when they kind of had to take over. And, they would look at Jack and you would see his physical presentation, that he's some young guy who could have been technically, if they had children when they were young, very, very young, he could technically have been their child, but he would certainly, have been an older brother or a younger brother, and they would have had that same kind of parental responsibility because he was essentially an orphan. But so it was kind of funny to watch them go through this process, kind of fumble their way through a little bit, but they got better at it as they went. Sam starts out, being very, trying to be the more caring one. So this is, how we need to treat him. Whereas Dean is like, well, we got to be careful of him. We can't ever forget whose son he is or where he came from, or we don't know what he's capable of. So Dean was very cautious. But then by the time that they might lose Jack, I think it actually upset Dean more than it did Sam. And Dean knew what to do in terms of, come on, kid, let's go out and have a day doing things you want to do. So somehow he worked his way through from the beginning of being kind of the awkward, what the heck do I do now kind of dad figure, to being the one who had it more figured out.
Yeah, it's almost like, because I think Dean sort of leads with his emotions, and Sam is sort of more like, level-headed. And so I think leading with his emotions, he went from those extremes, like, I have to protect everybody, like, who is this kid, to, okay, I love him now, so
right.
And I'm going to protect him. So that transition was really nice to see.
I thought it was interesting because when Sam first met Adam, before we knew Adam was Ghoul, you could really see Sam want to be somebody's older brother, just like Dean had been for him. And he
Mhm.
was really enjoying teaching Adam how to use guns and teaching him about hunting and talking to him. So it, in some ways, it was sort of like seeing Sam get a do-over chance with that, with Jack, because now he had a chance to spend more time with Jack. And it was also interesting to see that for as much patience as Dean always had with Sam, and that any, burn the world down if it'll save Sam, he wasn't ready to extend that to Jack until the very end. There were one set of rules for Sam and one set of rules for the rest of the world. And Sam even calls him on it at one point and says, well, you refused to shoot me when I was going to go dark side. Why you put up with me being possessed and all these other things? Why can't you do that for Jack? Well, that was you. And it takes a while for Dean to let Jack in enough. Nobody's ever as close as Sam, but he does start to extend some of that to Jack. Although he's also not against using Jack as a human battering ram to get them out of the locked room that Mrs. Butters puts them in. Hey, kid, we can make you blow the door off with your body. Let's try that. So he's that older brother maybe you shouldn't take your eye off of.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Now, we also got to see Jack be Balfagor for a good bit of season 14. What do you think of Balfagor? Anna?
You're
muted.
Oh, you're not now. She's not now.
There, okay.
I am trying to remember it. And I don't know that I can't remember.
Okay.
The demon. He was the demon in season 14.
I do remember there being a moment when he was a demon, but it's not clear in my head where I feel like I could. I'm sorry. Slightly brain dead. I have 2 children that are very small and demanding.
And it's nighttime and bedtime. Personally, I loved Balfagor. I mean, the whole time you knew that there was more to him than what he was pretending. But I thought it was great. And I thought that Alexander did a great job as that character, and that he looked as though he was having fun. And with Jack, everything was always so, not that playing Jack wasn't fun. This was different. This was, there is all this emotion and everything that is wrapped up in Jack, as in, where did he come from? What's it like with, two guys and an angel that are your caretakers, and essentially they're his guardians. But Belphegor, I thought that was just a chance for him to get to do something else for a few episodes, and I thought it was a lot of fun. When he was at Con last year, that was one of the questions I asked to him was, what did you have as much fun playing the character as we did watching it? And his simple answer was yes. So.
Yeah, I thought it was a smart way for the writers to keep Jack in the script, even though at the moment he wasn't Jack. But by that point, we were trained to have characters who looked like a character but weren't that character because they were possessed or shape-shifted or something else. So they knew that the audience would follow along here, but it kept him in the script and top of mind, and we were assured then that he was going to show up again later, or they wouldn't have kept him around. So I thought that was cool. He did seem to be having a lot of fun with that. And just the snarky, world-wise, everything so different from Jack's utter naivete was a lot of fun. Those sunglasses, I mean, really. But I also thought it was interesting that Chuck wanted to see the Abraham and Isaac ending in the cemetery. He wanted to see Dean kill Jack. And then, when he didn't get that from Dean, Chuck took it on himself. And yet, down in hell, when Belphegor and Cass went down to retrieve the relic, and it turned out that Belphegor had a hidden agenda all the way along, Cass, who thought of himself very much as Jack's adopted father, ends up having to kill him. So I thought it was interesting from the writers that while we didn't get the Abraham and Isaac moment with Dean and Cass, we got it in a sense from Dean and Jack. We got it in a sense from Cass and Jack. And that was very poignant. And I thought that was an interesting twist on the part of the writers.
Yeah, and it had to have been hard for Cass because he knew it's not only does this, it wasn't as though Belphegor was a shapeshifter. He had possessed his body. It was Jack's actual body. It didn't, even though it was not him in there at the time, and as I recall, you could kind of see it in Cass's face that, when he has to first take him on, that it's like, oh no, what am I going to be doing to my surrogate son?
Mm-hmm. Now, Lucifer is also part of the 3 men and a baby thing here, because he is actually Jack's biological parent, such as it is. And we get to see Lucifer try to be a dad to the extent that it's in his ability to do. He made some sort of effort. How do you do? What stuck out to you about Lucifer trying to chummy up to Jack? Anna?
That was fun. And I'm sorry if you can hear screaming children in the background. I think like some of my favorite moments, like with Lucifer, it was like at the very, very end. And it was like, okay, so are you gonna step up? Are you gonna be somebody to Jack? And okay, sorry guys, 1 second. I'm gonna have to go on mute for the child that's screaming.
Okay, Carol?
Okay.
We'll come back and let Anna finish later.
I think that, I believed that Lucifer did have a desire at one point to really get to know him. I think when he first met Jack when they were in the alternate world, I think that he did have a desire to do something, to make something of that relationship that was more than just, oh, guess who your biological father is, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think he did have some good intentions, but because he's who he is, there were some other things that took over. By the one of the last times we see him as Lucifer, he's kind of gotten past that, I guess you could say, in terms of, that's no longer his primary objective. It's kind of like, okay, well, I want you for what you can do for me. And if we can be pals along the way and that falls into place, then that's fine. But I want your power, and that's something that is actually, it's not as though it doesn't happen in between real life human people either. It's just a lot more extreme when you're talking about Lucifer and his half angel, half human son, that it becomes more intense, I guess you could say. But that kind of thing does occur. There are plenty of fathers, that don't do right by their sons for whatever reason. There are mothers that don't too, but there's something I think that can be said for the relationships between fathers and sons, and then, and mothers and daughters on the other side of that. I think that they can be somewhat unique in terms of how the relationships can play out. And that on the show between Lucifer and Jack was just an extreme example of, what not to do.
Mm-hmm. Anna, back to you.
I do not even remember what I was saying before, so I apologize about that. But yeah, I mean, I think Lucifer is probably the example of what not to do in a lot of situations.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Just about anything on the show. Yeah.
But I think there were some moments where he was like, I'm gonna try to convince this kid that he should, see me as his father and want to be like me.
Right.
And
Follow in my footsteps.
follow my footsteps. He tried really hard. And I think there were moments, when Jack wanted a relationship too, he wanted to at least know him. But I don't know that there was any point where, there was a genuine relationship between the two of them. So it's, it was always just not going to go well.
Yeah, it wouldn't be supernatural without daddy issues. Everybody,
true.
Exactly.
Everybody has daddy issues. And so, Jack wasn't going to get off that easily. I loved it when Lucifer, in one of the initial moments in the alternate world, is trying to be like the world's worst non-custodial parent. And, there's always, when you have a divorced set of parents, there's the custodial parent who has to keep kids to the rules and make them go to bed on time and make them go to school. And they get all the flack for having the rules. And then sometimes there's the non-custodial parent who tries to buy the affection by, let's have ice cream for dinner and let's break all the rules. And you can stay up all night because they don't have to live with the results. And Lucifer struck me as that world's worst non-custodial parent trying to buy Jack's affection. Like, hey, how about if I make you a Wookiee? What if we go see the stars? We can go anywhere in the galaxy. But offering him a Wookiee.
Yeah, really, of all things, yeah.
I can Wookiee.
I mean, Star Wars is the way to your kid's heart.
Yeah. I thought that was so funny, but yeah, it wouldn't be supernatural without daddy issues. Now, it also wouldn't be supernatural without people making bargains and deals. And Cass makes a deal to save Jack's life after he's been thrown into the empty and returned. And that ends up playing out in a significant way later in the show. What did you think about that bargain that he made, that the empty wouldn't come for him until he was finally happy? I mean, Cass seemed to think, being a quasi Winchester, he was safe from ever getting held to that, As Sam
at least
said,
for a good long time. Yeah, at least for a good long time.
Yeah, Sam's comment about he's a Winchester, he's already cursed. I think Cass thought that was a safe bargain, but it didn't end up that way. John made a deal for Dean. Dean made a deal for Sam. Mary made a deal for John. Round and round we go, and Cass makes a deal for Jack. Any thoughts about that as it goes into the supernatural canon? It was an interesting bargain to make with the empty, and it ended up playing a major role in winning the last game. But what do you think, Anna?
I mean, it's sort of like the rule of never read the Latin, never make the deals. But they always make them, and it always ends up working out in the end. Team free will all the way. I don't know, Carol, what do you think?
I'm not surprised he did it at all. I think it was a reaction to what I think most parents would do that. Most parents would say, take me instead of my child. The problem with that is that, what happens to the rest of your children, but I digress. But I'm just saying, I think most people would do that. And, Cass, didn't hesitate. That was, the idea was that, okay, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to protect him. And of course, we all know as viewers, you're thinking, oh, dude, seriously, this is going to be a problem later, because the empty is going to find a way, around what you're promising, regardless of, what you might think. But as far as the effect, it certainly had a major effect on, what happened to Cass in the end. That's where he did end up. He just ended up there a lot faster than we probably would have expected. But it didn't surprise me that he made the deal itself at all.
No. I don't think I'm ever surprised by any of them making deals.
No.
It does sort of be the course of rigueur, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
they're always going to put it on themselves.
Yeah, Lucifer had been taken off the board by that point. Chuck had been taken off the board. The Crossroad demons really had been defanged. There was no one of any real power left to make bargains with except the empty and death. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that did surprise me going into that last season was Billy's treachery and just how fixated she was on getting vengeance. And it really didn't seem to matter to her the why or the how, as long as she got vengeance. And she never figured on the empty being just as malicious. So you had two primordially powerful entities that wanted nothing except revenge. And Cass managed to square them off against each other while paying his debt and saving Sam and Dean and Jack. And I thought that was a real interesting way to have played it, because when Cass made that bargain for Jack, originally I thought, where is this going to go? How is this going to work? Is this going to be one of those plot threads they just forget to resolve, at the end of the series? And I thought, we were coming down to the wire there. I thought, yeah, it's going to be right there with the voicemail. We never get resolution on this. And then darned if it didn't end up turning the tide. And I thought that was an interesting twist from the writers, and a very Winchester thing to do. Speaking of which, what do you think about Jack coming to see himself as a Winchester? That scene when he expels Michael from possessing Rowena and says, I am a Winchester. Was there anybody who didn't jump to their feet and clap? I mean, really. But what do you think of that? Potentially means that at least somewhere in his psyche, Jack, the new god, is a Winchester. Just kind of interesting. We got slight spoiler here. We got to see that again in the Winchesters, the new show.
Don't tell me, I haven't seen that episode yet.
I'm so behind.
So what do you think of Jack's self-concept as he walks off into the sunset, being God and a Winchester? Anna?
I love it. I think so, even just like God being a hunter is kind of funny, because he kind of did take on the persona of a hunter as well at some point. But I think the Winchesters are godly in their own ways. They definitely have that air of nothing can touch me. And so I guess it translates well into Jack actually being God. But yeah, I mean, I think it's better a Winchester than a Chuck.
Yeah, this is true. Carol?
Yeah, I think that for him to declare that, he was, at the time that he was declaring that, it was as much of a declaration that I'm not part of whatever family you are part of. I'm not going to do these things that you want me to do. I'm going to do what they want me to do. I think it was a rejection as much as it was an acceptance on his part. And, it made sense because, yes, he had been essentially raised by these guys. I wasn't it, Sam was the first human being he saw. Isn't that Sam who found him?
Mhm.
In the house. So, uh, there was that, which also probably explained some of Sam's protective instincts that he had from the very beginning, and trying to take it easy on him, and being a little less suspicious, I guess, maybe than Dean was, sometimes to his detriment, but that was his inclination, was just he saw him first or whatever. And I think that it just goes to show how much of an impact that they had on Jack, that they weren't just his jailers. They weren't just the people keeping him in check as much as possible, even though that was part of their job. But that's part of any parent's job anyway. We're all parents. You guys know what I'm talking about. So, it became, for him, just a natural progression, I think, to see himself as being part of that family, even after what happened to Mary, which even Dean came to accept was not, intentional, and was not something that Jack had that he wanted to do. It happened. And in any case, that's my feeling about it. That he was declaring himself and saying, yeah, if I have to pick a team, I'm picking these guys rather than you.
See, I thought that Mary got herself killed because she hadn't raised teenage boys. Anyone who has raised teenage boys knows that when they're in a mood, you do not follow them into the yard nagging at them. That's a good way to get snapped at, or in her case, snapped. But I just watched that going, lady, you never had teenagers, did you? You completely preventable. You do not do that. And look what happened. Now, the last thing I want to ask about is Jack gave us a 1 or 2 sentence explanation in that last time we saw him in episode 1519 that Amara was with him. So Amara and Chuck had gone off together at the end of season 12 and season 12, right? Season 11.
Yeah, season 11, I think.
11, yeah. And the last we knew, she was with Chuck, but then they sucked the godness out of Chuck. So what do you think about Amara hanging out with Jack in some sort of, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that. What do you think, Anna?
If there was going to be a season 16, I would say that's probably going to be a future issue that we're going to be getting into.
One of those plot threads, yeah.
Right, one of those plot threads that we're going to pick back up, and it's going to be a big to do. Yeah, I don't think that is probably the best influence for him to have, playing God or being God. I guess he's not playing anymore.
Well, maybe they'll go back to Iceland and soak in the hot tub or something and watch the Northern Lights. If Chuck didn't kill all the masseuses. Carol?
Well, I think that the way that I took it was that the whole premise with Chuck and Amara anyway was that it was supposed to be a balance between dark and light. Well, it's kind of interesting that they switched, and that Chuck became so dark and Amara became much more of the light. And the fact that she was kind of absorbed at the time, within Jack, and yet he had Chuck's power too. To me, it just kind of, that made sense, because it meant that balance could be maybe restored in a way that they could never have done between themselves, because they were too, well, at least Chuck at the last couple of seasons of the show. Not that he was ever a good guy, but let's face it, he was hilarious in the beginning. Or he was amusing, even before we knew he was God. Even after we found out, he was actually pretty funny. So I think that, to have these two very powerful entities that are within this other being, to make a more distinct whole. It was now 3 parts rather than just 2. And, maybe that third part was what they needed in order to have that balance anyway.
Yeah, I figured it was a way to at least throw a sop at well, whatever happened to Amara when Chuck lost his power. Even if it might not hold up completely to scrutiny, it didn't leave us with a dangling loose end. I like Anna's idea that, well, season 16, they're going to bring the show back like they say they want to. Maybe we've got Amara again. Who knows where they'll pick it back up. But at least for the time, if you didn't dig at it too deeply, it kind of made sense. She had to go somewhere. And maybe she's an auntie, maybe that brought out some sort of best aunt kind of thing with her. And that could be fun. Well, folks, we have blown through our time. It's been wonderful. You guys have been fantastic. And before we wrap up, let's let everybody know where we can find you online. Anna?
I am on Twitter at Anna K Pants, and that's where you can find me.
Okay, Carol.
Yes, if you go to Facebook and put in DragonCon Urban Fantasy, you'll come right to our track page, and that's where you find out all of the the events that we have going on during con. We also have virtual events that go on throughout the year. Gail and Anna have both been on a number of, Gail was on all of the Supernatural Rewind panels, which we started during the pandemic. And, we did 15 different episodes of those, and those are all available on our YouTube channel. And if you go there and put in DragonCon Urban Fantasy, it takes you directly to the channel. And we are currently doing Buffy Watch, and Anna is involved in that too. So it's a lot of fun, and we hope people will tune in. And we do also have author interviews on the YouTube channel. Right now I've got 18 on there, and Gail's was the most recent. So
that was fun.
It was. So come and check us out.
I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on all the social media under those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. I do have a YouTube channel where all of the Supernatural panels from Continual, as well as a lot of other book videos, are easy to find. And I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, as well as being a staff writer for the Winchester Family Business blog. But most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you both so much for being here tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.